Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews, be sure to check out our show on YouTube. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
In our family, there was no clear line between religion and movie reviews. So this must be Reviews Without Remorse with a very special episode, number 123. My friend Dave and I are going to discuss A River Runs Through It. And this is for a very special friend of ours, our good buddy Russ, who
Hey, Russ.
just got out of the hospital after right about 2 solid weeks of being laid up. And now he's at home recovering. And, well, I went to visit Russ last week, and I basically told him, I said, Dave and I we got a podcast called Reviews Without Remorse. We review movies. And he's like, really? And I sent him, I sent him Godzilla because I figured that'd be the one that's good for a couple of chuckles. And,
it is very good for a chuckle, yes.
Yeah. So I went back a day or two later and visited him again, and he says, "You ever do old movies?" I'm like, well, kind of depends. He's like, "Did you ever do A River Runs Through It?" Which I happens to know is, I believe it's Russ's favorite movie, if not his, in his top 3. There's only one or two others that I can think of for him, but I believe this is Russ's favorite movie. So Dave and I decided to do an extra episode this week, and we are going to do A River Runs Through It for our good buddy Russ while he recovers.
Get well soon, my man.
It is often those we live with and love, the ones we care about the most, who elude us. Even now, when I look back on the Montana of my youth, I long to understand what happened there and why.
Norm, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Minister, I guess.
What are you going to be? Professional fly fisherman?
There's no such thing.
There isn't?
The story about 2 sons of a stern minister, one reserved, one rebellious, growing up in rural Montana while devoted to fly fishing. Written by Richard Friedenberg, based on the novel written by Norman Maclean, directed by Robert Redford. A River Runs Through It. I mean, the movie itself is outstanding. It is filled with character, with subtlety, with poignance and moments, and by my estimation, some of the finest cinematography ever done in film. It weirdly has, knowing why we're reviewing it, I feel like it had an extra level of poignancy to me. I don't know if you felt the same way. I hadn't seen it in many, many years. I had forgotten just how much I really enjoyed this movie. Is it like the greatest plotted movie ever? Probably not, but Redford is really an amazing director when it comes to his actors and choosing his shots and everything like that. The way he has the camera like basically make love to the act of fly fishing is like fly fishing. I mean, we know Russ is a huge fisherman, and that's his thing, and that's great, and I would never take that away from him. To me, it's boring as hell. But yet, Redford makes it so beautiful and tempting that by the end of the movie, you're like, I want to go fishing.
It makes you feel like, you know what? When you're after a tough week, after a tough day, when your brain is scrambled, which mine usually is lately, it made you kind of say, you know what? I wish I could just go down to the river and do some fly fishing, although I feel like I'd probably mangle it. But, yeah.
You and me both, man.
Yeah. Yes. This, I have to say, and I'll preface by saying, I kind of, this is one of those films that I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and it's one of those where when you finally get to it, you're like, how did I go so long and never see this film? It is absolutely, positively stunning. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous film. And it reminded me of when I was kind of discovering, when I was kind of becoming a movie lover growing up. I remember that it was probably not a coincidence that most of my favorite films growing up, the ones that I really went, wow, were oftentimes based on novels. And I think the reason for that is there's sort of an edge that those films have in the respect that when you're working from a novel, you already have sort of an emotional attachment. You have sort of a visual painting. A book, a good book will fill your mind in a way that your average movie won't do. A book will really paint a lush picture for you. It'll give you a feeling, a visual feeling in your mind. And when you start down the process of translating that onto film, you already have the challenge of you see what you have to live up to, so your stakes are already higher. So again, I feel like a lot of the films that I kind of got really hooked on growing up were usually based on novels for just that reason. And yes, this film is gorgeous. It is lush. It is the kind of movie that you can go back to often because it paints such a wonderful picture that even when you know how the story ends, you still want to sort of relive it. It's like walking down your favorite meadow. It's walking down your favorite path, your favorite park, just for the scenery, just for the sounds and the smells, etc. So yeah, I mean, obviously, it's kind of already kind of mind blowing in that respect. I was drawing parallels to other films. One that comes to mind, you'll probably guess.
Legends of the Fall. I hope not.
Legends of the Fall.
I mean, that did come out 2 years later, so there is something to that.
I mean, yeah, right. It is. It kind of sort of fell into that same realm. First of all, it's odd, or not odd, I should say. It's interesting that that's another one of, I know, Russ's favorite movies. Probably not a coincidence, is what I was trying to get at.
Well, it's very similarly plotted.
It is very similarly plotted. Brad Pitt, I would not say it's a similar character, but definitely has similar traits. It's a period film with beautiful scenery, beautiful score. I mean, the score is, I would probably have to give it to Legends of the Fall to edge out as far as just score goes. But again, very similar here, where again, you have a very lush world that, again, because you're doing a period film, it's a different time. You have such sort of a lush playground to explore and live in. And the theme of the two brothers, three in Legends of the Fall, but it really gets down to two pretty quickly. Spoilers.
Boo!
Yeah. But here you have a lot of the same things happening. You have two brothers who are and again, it's almost, I want to kind of give it to this one in that respect too, because it's like it's funny when I read the synopsis. Again, I went into this film knowing nothing about it, literally nothing about it, except for the fact that there's fly fishing on the cover. But so I watched it, and then afterwards I checked out a couple of the synopses of the film, and they would say, "Oh, two brothers, one is this and one is that," as if they're so clear opposites of each other.
Right.
I didn't get that watching the film. I got the idea that they were very similar, but just kind of one beat apart. Brad Pitt, again, he plays that character, not unlike Legends of the Fall. He's kind of got that itch that he can't seem to scratch. He's driven by something else that the one brother. I will say that there is, one is slightly more sensible, although you could even argue that point a bit. And one is a little more of just the wild card, lives a little more passionately, lives a little more authentically. I might even use the word sincerity, since this is a term that has always followed our friend Russ around. And I think that is something that probably he identifies with. You sort of he lives, from his heart, for better or for worse. Sometimes that leads to good things. Sometimes it leads to trouble. And the Brad Pitt character here seems to be perfectly fine to follow it into trouble, which again, and it's interesting to me because I watched that and it's almost like that's the part of the movie that I can't identify with. I feel like a lot of people will watch this and say, wow, I can really identify with that character because he kind of always sort of finds himself in trouble. But it was almost like I didn't quite get why that would be in this case. For example, I liked when, again, the sensible brother, quote unquote, falls in love with the flapper girl, and already almost from the get-go, you're kind of scratching yourself. She looks like trouble. I don't know if I would go down that road, but yet he seems sort of oblivious to that. So again, is he the sensible one or not? Brad Pitt, for some reason, seems to have her. In fact, I was actually wondering as I'm watching it why. It seemed like every time this guy would say, "Oh, I'm in love with this girl. Oh, we want to do this with you," Brad Pitt would all of a sudden bridle and be like, "Ugh," why would you want to do that? And I almost was wondering, is there going to be some revelation later that Brad Pitt already shagged this girl at a party or something? Right? They had some sort of prior connection that they were sort of keeping quiet because the brother was so head over heels. So I didn't quite get why he was kind of getting his nose out of joint. The fact that the brother was kind of into this girl. It did. I mean, again, it's not like the two brothers. If the brothers were sort of inseparable all this time growing up, and then the one brother kind of goes off and sort of falls for almost like that Chasing Amy vibe, where one of them kind of gets distracted by a girl and it's going to ruin everything. I could see it, but the two were not that close at that point. The bond was not, so strong. So I wasn't really getting that. But again, I wasn't really understanding part of why his character always seemed to gravitate toward trouble. I guess I feel like another story might have had a character where, well, trouble just seemed to sort of go his way, but not in this case. He seemed to seek it out. So yeah, there's a lot of parts of this story which we will explore that I wasn't quite getting, and there was moments where I kind of felt like it's drama for the sake of drama. There was other parts that I thought were absolutely spectacular, and I thought that they really, really did a nice job of conveying this family that was founded on structure. I really thought they did a great job relying that part that the preacher, and he loves the. It was, again, he's interesting because it's sort of a contradiction in some ways. He's got this father who basically taught them how to fish using the meter thingy, the piano meter, whatever you call that thingy.
The metronome.
Thank you. You're right. Right. So here they are learning in almost militaristic fashion this very patient way of fishing. And it was almost like, so you're watching the Brad Pitt character. He lives sort of wild in one way, yet he's fallen completely into the fishing thing, which again is very much about patience and patience and perseverance, etc. So it was the film. The final product really is a fascinating symphony of different things happening. And some of it I really, really gravitated towards. Some of it I was more watching as a sense of spectacle as opposed to something I could sort of grab onto myself. But yeah, I could definitely understand why this would be a film that somebody would absolutely fall in love with.
It's funny. I completely agree with everything that you just said, with a slight caveat. I kind of think I think I kind of got what Brad Pitt's character, Paul, his character's name is Paul McLean. I think I kind of got what his thing was. He lives a reactive life, not a proactive life, and he has a freedom that he feels like any type of outside, third party devotion takes away from him. He's always the one. He's the one suggesting let's get the old man's rowboat and throw it in the river. Let's go up to Lolo's and so on and things like that. It's not. He can't comprehend the idea of his character can't comprehend the idea of subverting his own freedom, his own personal freedom and his own personal choice,
right,
for the sake of family or love or anything like that. I'm sure he loves Mabel in his own way, but he would never attach himself to that forever. He loves his family. He goes and visits his family, but okay, after dinner, what does he do? He gets up and he goes out to party and gamble and stuff like that. Yeah. It's just not his nature to take that any further and allow himself to be more than that. So when the Norman character told Paul that he was in love, and he gave this kind of wry smile, and I took that as I envy you that you can give that to yourself. And it's like we need to celebrate it. It wasn't. I don't think it was a jealousy thing. It was just along the lines of, wow, I wish I could do something like that. It's like, but I can't. My love is the typewriter, the bottle, the cards, and the river.
Right. Yes, and that's great. But to clarify, man, I would not have called that look jealousy either. It was almost more like oh, you stupid idiot. Not so much. I wish I could have that, as much as what are you thinking that you would even bother doing that?
Yeah, it was just not understanding. The way, I mean. And I'm not implying the characters anyway, but almost like an autistic child sometimes can't understand another person's emotions. It's just a disconnect that this character has. And because the story is written by the actual Norman MacLean, of course he has some insight as to what his brother is, but you really never have complete insight. I mean, as close as you are to your brother, I'm sure there are things about your brother you have no clue about. And that's just the nature of family. There's always that slight disconnect. And I know you're close with your brothers, so it's but if you were to write your brother's life story, if God forbid anything tragic happened to him, I mean, could you honestly say what was going through his mind at certain points? It's hard to say. And I found that part of the story actually refreshing, that it didn't try to over-explain it, that it didn't try to break down the psychology of his character to make you understand. The one thing that's great about this movie, on top of the cinematography, is the way Redford just trusts his actors to emote in scenes, to deal with things. Even when Norman is calling Jesse the first time on the phone, it's a one-sided conversation, like a medium shot. And I never thought of Craig Schaefer as much of an actor, but that's like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, just watching him try to fumble to try to get another date with Jesse on the phone. I love that. I love the way that played out.
Yeah, I was watching him in this film as well. Interestingly, he's an actor who never really quite popped. I mean, it's funny. I know he's the kind of guy I've seen in stuff, and the only thing I was like the first thing I went, oh, that's the guy. He was the jerky boyfriend from Some Kind of Wonderful. He was almost he was that jerky preppy boyfriend in the John Hughes movie in the 80s. So it was good to see him in this doing something a little bit more. I looked on his IMDb, and I'm pretty sure this is still his biggest role. And he was fine in it. I did notice there were moments where his delivery was very, very flat, and I don't mean flat the way I would usually that means I didn't like it. It was almost like it was intentionally deadpan to where I almost thought it might have even been dubbed later to try to accentuate the fact that he was flat, which I guess was trying to convey nervousness at some moments. So yeah, he was good. He was interesting. But yeah, but again, it was interesting because I felt like all of the characters almost were a bit of a conundrum. Because again, like I said, he keeps he's supposedly the sensible brother, But again, I felt like as soon as he got back in town and he was taken with this girl, again, you're sort of looking at it going I I wasn't even sure. Like, is it intentionally? Like, you're supposed to get the feeling like, oh, dude, don't. She looks like trouble. Like, the second he met her, she says something like, here, go get me a drink or something or other. So it's almost like any normal guy would have been like, all right, so this is pretty much what I'm in for if I try to get serious with this girl. My whole life is going to be following her around, getting her drinks. And then, you know, so again, like, but he was instantly taken. So you're sort of saying to yourself, well, where's that sensible guy that you're, and then when you actually meet the family, and that was interesting too. I mean, they really spent a lot of time with her and her family, which I thought was interesting. They did, that whole sort of side story with the jerky brother was interesting, and it was weird because, again, like, almost from the get-go, you're kind of getting this, like, really just bad vibe. You know, like, as soon as he meets the family and they're kind of gaga over the brother, and then they're like they all kind of go like, oh, will you take him fishing, please? Like, tomorrow? Like, what time? Or what? Like you're kind of going like, all right. Like it's kind of already getting like, dun dun. Like, it's really, you're getting a really creepy vibe. And again, like, you're saying to yourself, like, dude, just run. This family's obviously Looney Tunes, and it's just gonna get worse. So again, when the brother turned out to be a complete creep, etc., like, you know, no surprise, because you knew something was wrong.
My brother Paul and I grew up in a time when the land was still untouched.
In Montana, there are 3 things we're never late for: church, work, and fishing.
It was a world of wonder and possibility.
I'm in love with Jessie Burns. With all the fish in the river. I'm not like her.
The thing with Jesse's brother, at least the way that I took it, I thought was kind of a juxtaposition of the person that Norman could become versus the person that he came from. If Brad Pitt's character represents Montana at its purest, and you could argue that that's kind of what it was supposed to represent, the Neil Burns character, which is the brother's name, he kind of represents everything that is the outside world. You know, he's got the little sweater hanging off of his thing. He's kind of got this little smug attitude and doesn't really respect nature and stuff like that. And I kind of took that as kind of like a symbolic thing. Like, you know, here's a man, Norman's character is a man torn between these two worlds. He wants to do the academic thing. He wants to do, even earlier in the film when he first met Jesse and he almost crashed and burned talking about how, I've been to like the real jazz clubs and stuff like that. Look at how borderline he was for a minute there of being completely against the whole thing that his father even brought him up on about what are the rules? Paul says it. There's three things you're not late for: work, church, and fishing. Yeah. Okay, and which in this context is something that somebody outside of that area doesn't understand or doesn't respect, and that's what the Neil character I felt symbolized to me, that he was what he could become, and his brother represented where he came from. And I kind of liked that they kind of showed that juxtaposition. And in a way, he kind of does, in the end, embrace where he came from because he's trying to help the brother. He's trying to do the right thing for the brother. And in the end, he just throws up his hands and says, screw it, let's find our beers.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah.
This is what I love about this movie. There is a depth here that is like so subtle and not in your face that I just dig the ever living hell out of in movies. Yeah. You know, and this movie is just rife with it.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, I love the fact that it is, I believe, based on a true story. I believe it's based on his real life, experiences. So you could also make the argument, well, look, this story is not, it didn't come out of, creative writing 101. It doesn't have the beginning and middle and end and an arc and whatever. It could just be argued, well, this is a true story. Take from it what you will, glean lessons from it as you will. It's not, not everything is meant to represent something. So yeah, like you said, that bit of ambiguity is one of the charms. It doesn't spell everything out for you and say, well, this represents this and this means that or whatever. It could just be, this is how it was when I grew up, and that's that. yeah, in that respect, I kind of feel like, you know, you don't have to walk away saying, "Oh, I get it. This means this," and whatever. So yeah, I in that respect, I totally agree with you that that's part of the charm of the film. It's not telling you how to feel about everything. Again, having said that, I mean, I did sort of scratch my head at certain points and kind of go, all right, well, like it was funny when the guy shows up, obviously, but it was almost like when the guy actually showed up with the girl, like when he comes, he's obviously
Rawhide.
wasted. Yeah, Rawhide. Boy, there's a nickname. You know, like, yeah, I knew girls in town who were a little, you know, had a bad reputation, but Rawhide, wow, that's rough. That's right.
The Rawhide character is almost the stereotype, like the Stephen King, like bully type characters. You know what I mean?
Seriously, right?
In a weird way. Nothing against her. I was fine with it and what she was and everything. But yeah, I see what you mean.
I mean, I liked. You know, I tell you what, I liked that character, by the way, because again, it had a level of depth where, you know, it would have been real easy to just kind of say, oh, she's the town tramp, and just sort of show her as, you know, just real easy and slutty and whatever. But it wasn't that. You recognized that this was a person who was obviously very damaged, has obviously had a very rough go of things, you know, and probably some bad experiences, which is why she's kind of become the town, you know, pass around, whatever. Mm-hmm. So again, it was still sort of even though she was kind of, you know, on one hand, not very subtle, still with layers of kind of ambiance where you get the idea that there's more to this person than that. And it's almost like if Robert Redford, you know, wrote her backstory in his own mind, you know, I want this character, I want this actress to have, you know, something in her mind when she's playing this character, as opposed to just saying, all right, you're the town tramp, you're drunk all the time, whatever. Like, he probably said, I want this character to have a little depth. Here's a little backstory. Read up on her. That's how you play this part. You know, it's almost like that's sort of what I'm getting from this. There was some thought put into this character. Anyway, having said that, when the two show up, again, the cars, obviously, the guys, I love the guys are like, whoa, like, stop the car or whatever. Like, the fact that the guy showed up at the crack of dawn with this girl, obviously after drinking and partying all night long, I remember thinking to myself, like, how did the guy even have the wherewithal to even go? You know, like, to even remember, like, oh, like any other person would have been like, I gotta beware. Yeah, whatever, screw it, I'm not going there. But he actually gets himself there, and then the fact it was almost funny. Like, and then the two boys are like, oh brother, how are we gonna get this guy up? How are we gonna get him out? How are we gonna do this? I'm saying to myself, leave him in the car, let him sleep it off. Go fish, go enjoy yourself. He doesn't have to come home with fish just to prove that he fished, or you can just give him one. Here, there's your fish. You fished today. Tell everybody it was fun, and that's it. So it was kind of funny, but I guess again you're dealing with that. How do I say it? I think the beauty of the characters is that they're sort of conflicted with, well, you know, I like Brad Pitt's character. You know, I might be the kind of guy to go out in trouble and kind of do my own thing. Yet I was raised a certain way that I'm not going to lie to people and say that I did this if I didn't, or I did make a promise to do something, so I'm going to do it. I mean, even the brother, when he goes to Brad Pitt in the first place, saying I need a favor, and it was like that was I like that scene where he says, you know, I need a favor. What? Fishing, and like you're waiting for Brad Pitt to go, all right, fishing is not a favor, that you're asking me to do something I like doing. And then he goes, well, her brother's in town. And he's like, oh crap, you know, like already he's already kind of like, oh brother, what are you rolling me into here? But again, he said he would do it. He made the promise, so he did it. So again, I like that subtle conflict of, you know, of personality traits. You know, like on one hand, I much rather just blow this off, go do my own thing and whatever. But I was raised to keep a promise, and that's what I do. So again, I like that kind of, you know, the development of the characters in that respect.
It was an interesting dichotomy for the character, because, like, there was that one point where he tells her he loves her, and they go to Lolo's, and he gets into the fight, and the brother, like, goes off and everything like that. And even though, like, he's about to drive away, and he tells him, we'll go fishing tomorrow morning. And in my mind, I've got this pit in my stomach thinking to myself, yeah, no, he's not making it home alive. So
right, yes.
The fact that he shows up the next morning right on time for fishing is just like, it's like a thing that makes you love the character just a little bit more. It's like you're one messed up individual, but what devotion you have.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yes, yeah. That and I tell you what, too, that was kind of again, and it was a moment where on one hand, I was kind of going, all right, we got drama just for the sake of drama because it's a good time for a dramatic scene. Again, like of all the places to go, they go there where, I mean, on a good day, it would seem like nothing but trouble. I guess we've all done it. We've all walked into places that we know we probably shouldn't be walking into, but whatever. But again, and Brad Pitt just goes right for the back room, right to start a fight where he knows he's got trouble waiting for him. And it's almost like, and then, then he walks outside saying, I'm going back inside. And the brother's like, what? And again, it's almost like you're kind of saying it. That's kind of the moment where I'm kind of like, all right, now why is he just drawn to trouble like a moth to a flame when it doesn't really, but again, I guess you could say that about anything. Like, I had a brother who liked to drink and gamble too much. I don't get it, but it exists. So what, why am I sitting here as a viewer challenging this so much? I don't know. It kind of rubbed me funny, but I absolutely agree with you that it was a nice surprise because again, you thought for sure, you absolutely thought Brad Pitt is not walking out of that place. I will never see him again. So when he does show up the next morning, just kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like, hey, what's up? Let's go fishing. And you're kind of like, wait, what? So that was good. Which in turn, I think I was kind of mildly disappointed when all of a sudden, like the next scene, I got the call, my brother was dead, beaten up, whatever. And I was like, oh, all right. Like, and again, all right, it subverted my expectations. I don't know if it was the most satisfying conclusion, though, because again, I wasn't even getting why he was so drawn. It's almost like I was waiting for the movie to sort of explain to me exactly what it was about him, what his particular tick was, to explain why he was always drawn to trouble. Even the scenes early on when he brings the Indian girl, the Native American, excuse me,
Mabel,
to
yes.
the bar, where they're still in that time where they're discriminating and they don't let certain people in. Which again, by the way, was something they did again in Legends of the Fall. And it makes me kind of wonder, like, okay, was this did somebody say, hey, I want a scene like this because I feel very strongly about it? It was good, but I'm watching it kind of going like, all right, but I'm not quite getting why, again, kind of trouble just for the sake of trouble and drama for the sake of drama. If you are, like, first of all, they don't really explain that Brad Pitt's character is really head over heels in love with this girl or anything like that. Like, she's just a casual somebody he's seeing. All right. If you're not that serious about her, why do you have to parade her all over town and take her to places where you know you're going to have trouble? Or B, if you are serious with this person, why take her to that place? Like, let's say I'm dating someone that I really care about. Like, if I take this person to somewhere where I know they will have a hard time or be made to feel a certain way, made to feel bad, why would I take them there? Doesn't that show a flaw in my character that I don't know enough? Don't take them to someplace where they're not wanted and they might be made to feel some way. Just so I can tell somebody off and maybe feel good about myself that I did something I feel is right. And again, that's, my brain works a little differently than a lot of people. But in my mind, again, are you doing this to make you feel good or to make them feel good? Because I think you're putting them in a bad position. So again, why is he drawn to situations like that?
I feel like you're overanalyzing the character. I mean, he says it right in the beginning that there was just something about Paul. He always wanted to be the toughest. It's simple.
Right,
It's a simple little thing, but who knows what drives a person? I feel like in the case of the scene in the beginning with Mabel at the speakeasy, I feel like that was partially a thumbing his nose at societal standards, which is something that is very in line with the character, and
Agreed.
Also trying to. It was a combination of things. It was thumbing your nose. It was trying to overcome what he saw as an injustice and not being afraid to stand up, and be the toughest man in town. I kind of took it as all that. Whether or not it was selfish to do to her, we could probably debate that. But the thing is I feel like his character, it's not that he was being inconsiderate of her feelings. I feel like in his mind, he felt he was being extremely considerate of her feelings because she's a prejudiced against group. And he's like, no, you should not be. I'm going to take you wherever you want to go. You want to go here, we're going there. And I kind of feel like that's the way his character looks at it, not thinking further than that.
Yes, that's true. But again, I would disagree in the respect that you're saying that he's being considerate of her feelings. I'm saying that he's not.
No. You misunderstand.
I'm not saying that that's incorrect for this character. I'm not saying that it's poorly written. I'm simply saying that it's not how I would view that situation. But again, see, put it this way: in terms of screenwriting, right? We would say that a character arc is sort of defined by the lie that the character believes, right? There's like a character will usually believe something that is incorrect at the beginning of a story. It could be a matter of like, well, he doesn't know that he's good enough to take on this challenge. He doesn't know, how to overcome this challenge, etc. By the end, there is sort of a realization, or a coming to understand themselves. Like a character will say at the end, I was wrong about so and so, but now I sort of get it. Dances with Wolves. He starts in with a preconceived notion about the Indians, and by the end, he's come to a different realization, etc. I feel like I'm waiting for this character to have a similar moment. But again, I understand what you're saying about the story. Not everyone gets that. Not every person, will have a revelation by the end of a given story. People in real life will go their entire lives and never change. In fact, most people will, go through their. So yes, I agree with you that it's believable about the character, I suppose. Again, I'm just sort of saying that it's, again, not what I would do, I suppose. It's one of the things about the film that I found very challenging. That I'm sort of, on one hand, I believe, supposed to identify and admire this character for their boldness, but I'm conflicted because I can't admire him for like things like that. Again, like I said, he seems like he clearly has a chip on his shoulder that he's going to kind of. And again, I liked how he handled that situation. I liked that he said, like when he's standing there at the door and the guy's saying, the rules. He's like, well, whatever. And he says, what do you want me to do here? Like the guy says to him, he goes, well, look, what do you want me to do? He goes, I want you to get us a table for 4. Like he didn't get in his face. He didn't get nasty. He was nice. And he kept, he didn't break into like this kind of nastiness or anything. He didn't get in the guy's face or anything. He said, I want a table for 4. And he played it right. So again, I'm not knocking it as a, I'm not saying it's incorrect. I'm not saying that the story fails because of that. I'm just saying that, again, for a film that I think wants me to sort of admire this character and identify with his struggle, there's moments where I can and moments where I can't. That's all I'm really kind of getting at. I am overthinking it. You're absolutely positively correct. But that's what we're here for.
That is very true. That is very true. To me, the one thing that I loved about Brad Pitt's Paul is the fact that he is such a real character, and I'm sure that's based on Norman MacLean's writing. Because he was a real person to him. I like the fact that it's not cut and dry. It's not black and white, because that's the majority of people you meet in your life. There are going to be people that, I admire that you do this. I admire that you do that. And it'd be like, well, you know what? But that one thing you do right there, that's not my favorite, but it doesn't detract me from liking you as a person. It's kind of, I like that it's weird. I like that they try to balance it, that, you've got these two sides conflicting within Paul. The one side, a part of you is like, oh God, I don't like that guy at all. And then the sun comes out, his hat comes on, and he's doing the shadow casting so beautifully and perfectly.
Yes.
And it's like, I love this guy.
Yes.
it's a wonderful little dichotomy of the character, and I really appreciated that they kept that depth, that they didn't try, because they easily could have, written some kind of like arc where he has this moment just before he dies and stuff like that, and that would have been poignant and everything like that. But considering everything that came before it, I feel like the tone of the movie, that type of character arc wouldn't have fit. I completely understand what you're saying. In any other movie, I would be all over that as well. But I almost feel like you're slightly distracted by the Paul character because he's not really the protagonist. He is just he is just a part of the Norman character's remembrance of what Montana is. In many ways, he represents the purity of what Montana is and was, and his death is almost the symbolic death of the purity of Montana. If you look, in a way, I'm not saying that's exactly where they were going with it, but the character is a combination of so many things. He's meant to be a reminder of his past. He's meant to be a reminder of where he's come from. And, that not every person in life, it's never completely black and white. It's the thing about the characters that I enjoy the most in this movie is the fact that not every character is black and white and falls into a neat little peg. Save maybe for the father. Maybe the father is the only one that actually keeps a consistent characterization throughout and remains respectable and noble throughout. He may be the strongest character out of all of them. Everybody else is just full of flaws.
Yeah, no, and that's you're 1,000% correct. Absolutely. And again, I just to clarify, I mean, again, I'm really kind of speaking to my experience as I watch the film, not saying that it's incorrect in any way. I mean, seriously, I feel like as you're talking, I can think of a lot of characters. Fredo from The Godfather is an extreme example, but more to the point, maybe like De Niro's character in Mean Streets pops in my head, or even, to keep it simple, Paulie from Rocky. Paulie doesn't have a big character arc by the end of the film necessarily. There are moments where you see some character growth, that's for sure. But for the most part, it's not like he's going to have some wake-up revelation saying, oh, I've been wrong all along, and I treated you poorly, and I should be a different person. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you that the consistency in the character, and by the way, I felt like the moment where that sort of hits home is when the brother is talking him into moving to Chicago, and he just kind of looks at him with a smile, and he's like, brother, I'm not going to leave Montana. Mm-hmm. Like you get it. You sort of get it right there. He is who he is. He's not going to change who he is. He's happy with that. And so again, the character-wise, that works. And seriously, I mean, that is the struggle. I honestly, I sort of feel like in that respect, I'm identifying with the main character, the other brother, who is expecting that moment from his brother, frankly. In fact, if anything, I feel like what I'm saying is sort of a testament to how well it's written, because again, I'm sort of falling in line with the brother who keeps thinking like he's gonna fix the situation. Like at first, when he first realizes the Brad Pitt character's gotten himself into some trouble with gambling debts, etc., like he picks him up from the station. He's like, "Listen, I got some money. I can help you out." Right. Thinking this is a very simple fix. Right. And of course, later he realizes it's not that simple. It's not as simple. Oh, you have a gambling debt? Well, I'll help you out. No, Brad Pitt's like, yeah, he doesn't even respond to that. Like it was interesting the way that sort of was played out. And then later, again, he's kind of waiting for some sort of revelation from him. Hey, let's move to Chicago. You could do this, you could do that. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving Montana. Like so again, I feel like the movie was successful in pulling me into the same sort of struggle that the lead has. He said again, he's waiting for Brad Pitt to sort of snap out of it and go, yeah, this was kind of dumb on my part. I shouldn't have got myself into this trouble. How can we fix it? Okay, let's fix it and move along. No, not that simple.
But it was a tough world too.
You're picking your brother up too much lately.
Why is it the people who need the most help won't take it?
I know how we can go down in history.
I understand he's changed the spelling of our name.
I want you to know, I can help.
Well, let's talk about a simple number, maybe.
Who's
We
going
are
first?
at that time, my friend.
We are at that time. It's time to rank the film.
Yes, indeed.
Give it a
And
score from 1 to 10. Who's going first?
If you don't mind, I'd like to take a shot at it.
Please do.
We're going to rank the film, but this is not a rank film. This is a beautiful, beautiful little poem that Robert Redford successfully tells, based on the tales by Norman Maclean. You've got solid acting across the board. You've got wonderfully vivid characters. And you know me, I am a sucker for characters. I am a sucker for characters that seem to breathe life. You know, whether you agree with the character's choices or not, doesn't matter. As long as they feel like authentic people and they don't go against the story that built up to where they've gone to, I'm a happy camper. And the plot is simple, but it's meant to be a simple plot because it's a story about I say simple, and I feel weird using simple because it could come across as dismissive or like condescending, and I really don't mean it that way. I mean simple in the respect of, taking joy in just the things that we don't take joy in anymore. Family, work, church, fishing. These are things that I don't give enough time to in my life. And the fact that this movie just lovingly portrays it. I mean, this is a really nice family that the McLeans grew up in. The father was stern but fair, and he truly believed in the edict that, you work hard and you play just as hard. And watching these characters grow was a joy to me. And watching the beauty of Montana. I mean, you know that this movie basically ruined Montana forever. I mean, because everybody and their brother wanted to move. By the end of this movie, I was like, frick, Montana's like 2 states over. I'm going.
Dude, Mary and I were watching this, and the entire time she kept saying, okay, I know where I want to move to. I know where I want to live. We're going to Montana.
It's like a love letter to an entire state. But, that many parts of that state isn't really the same anymore. Because it's a different time. So when I use the word simple, I don't mean to be condescending. It's just, it's a time that really doesn't exist anymore. That said, I couldn't keep my eyes off this movie. I really was engaged. I found myself compelled. And even though I knew where the plot elements were going, even though everything fell exactly about where I thought it was, I still enjoyed it. And I still got a rush of emotion when Norman is explaining how his father kept asking over and over again about, what aren't you telling me about what happened to Paul? What happened? And I just felt this and the fact that it could do that, and we don't even see exactly what happens to the character, and in a weird way, it made it worse. I imagined what must have been like the worst possible way of finding Paul's body. So much, much worse than he ever could have portrayed. So in that respect, I thought that was a brilliant way of doing it, because in the audience's mind, it's always worse than it probably actually was.
Yeah.
I gave this movie a 9. I really loved this movie much more than I really thought I was going to. I normally don't go for like the overly poetic movies, but man, this is just a beautiful, beautiful poem, whose origins came from a wordsmith, the likes of which I'm going to wind up reading Norman Maclean's books because of this movie. Because I'm like, I want to seek this person out now because of that. And directed so deftly by a person who not only understands the craft of acting, but truly loves the visuals of the beautiful state of Montana. So, yeah.
Well said, my friend. And I also gave it a 9. I felt very similar to you in the respect that, again, it's not often that you find films that are of this caliber, that are that rich in their, again, like film is a medium that has so many advantages. It has the advantage, it's a visual medium. It is an audible medium. So it is sight, it is sound, and there are so many things you can do, and not a lot of films take advantage of all that. This film was absolutely, it was a love letter. It was a painting. It was a visual painting. And it really was masterfully done. I did, after I watched this, watched a couple old, Robert Redford talking about making the film. And this was really, this was a serious passion project for him. Apparently the author was not real keen on seeing it made into a film. But Robert Redford read it, loved it, was dying to do it, and kept kind of pestering this author, trying to talk him into the idea of allowing him to do it. And it shows. Again, it does show. There, and there's a couple times I remember back in the 90s reading, and you might laugh at this, The Bridges of Madison County.
I'm not gonna laugh. Go on.
It almost sounds like before you had 50 Shades of Grey, there was The Bridges of Madison County. It was like this like awful chick flick that everybody was talking about and reading for a short time. And I remember being homesick. I think I was sick as a dog for like a week, and it was sitting there, and I picked it up and I read it, and I really, really liked it because I thought it was just really, really. It wasn't the greatest book ever written, but it was kind of like, it had sort of a flow and a sense of poetry all its own. That it really was just sort of a gorgeous read. And I remember when they made that into a film, kind of going, uh-oh. And I watched that one, and I think Clint Eastwood actually directed it.
He did, yes.
He starred in it with Meryl Streep, and you would think that would be a home run, but I remember kind of watching it, kind of feeling like, kind of missed the mark. But this one, I feel like it's probably a similar situation. I didn't read the book, but it feels like a very similar situation, but I think Redford really crafted this thing magnificently. And like I said, it makes me want to go to Montana and learn fly fishing. So yeah, like I said, and the fact that I struggle with some of the character moments is not a detriment. It's kind of a plus, because honestly, like I said, I feel like I am sort of the main character in this, kind of struggling with other people's motivations and not quite getting it sometimes, and just kind of resigning to the fact that I don't know what makes people tick all the time, and I'm not gonna. So you just work with what you got, I guess, or with what people give you. So yeah, I think it's a 9. I think it's a magnificent film, and I'm glad I watched it.
I agree. So, who asked you?
So now we're gonna poke some holes. Let's see, who's going first with this one?
I can go. I have a very small one. Craig Schaefer had moments of inconsistency. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't terrible. I'm not saying he was a terrible actor, but there were moments where I didn't quite buy the character. In his tone, his delivery, or something like that. It just little things. And they were just so little moments that I feel like they could have done a little bit better. I can't even give you a specific example. There were moments that felt just a tiny, tiny bit hollow. It is such a small complaint, considering everything else. But just every once in a while, Craig Schaefer just kind of irked me slightly, just slightly. I don't know if that was because of the character. I don't know if it was the way it was written or the way it was acted. But there were just these moments where I just felt he was being inauthentic. Brad Pitt, conversely, always felt authentic. Even in his craziest moments, he always felt authentic. And Schaefer just had a couple of moments of inauthenticity and that's it. It's a really, really small complaint, and frankly, I don't even know why I brought it up.
No, listen, I agree with you, and I said the same thing. I felt like his performance was oddly flat sometimes, and it almost felt like, and seriously, like, it's gonna sound like I'm making a joke, but I'm not. I mean, I remember him as the jerky, preppy boyfriend from Some Kind of Wonderful. It was very stereotypical, rich boyfriend, jerk, but he played that. He was kind of so lively in that one. His performance in that is terrific. And I felt like when he did this one, it was almost more like, all right, well, this is a serious movie, so I got to be serious. I can't be over the top, and I can't be too expressive like I was in that one. I got to be serious in this because I'm the sensible brother. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought some moments just sort of felt oddly flat, like he was trying to be flat. So yeah, I agree with you. Not the best part of the film.
How about you?
I probably will just give it to the I thought the girlfriend's brother, this very speaking of stereotypes, I kind of felt like he was again, like, I mean, he might as well have been like twisting his mustache. He was just the evil, rotten, no good SOB. And again, it was weird, and again, it might be very authentic to the author's experiences, but honestly, I just felt like he was so one dimensional. Like I mean, honestly, the family was so weird around him. It was almost like that Twilight Zone episode with the kid who could magic people into hell, or like could do whatever he wanted. So they tiptoed around him all the time. Like, I mean, this family tiptoed around this guy so much that you're sitting there like going, all right, I get it, Twilight Zone. What's wrong with the brother? Why is everybody acting like this? Yet somehow later they seem genuinely surprised. You left him alone and look what you did to him, or something or other. I kind of just thought like he was just so sinister that it was just a little over the top, and they could have dialed that back just a tiny bit. I mean, the guy, walking around with the sweater hanging around his neck the entire time, I was like, all right, I get it. He's a jerk. That was it. Maybe just a little over the top with him.
I'll grant you that. He was a little, like from the get-go, he was so damn smug that I was like, oh my God, I just want to punch him.
Right. Like he called him like boy or something. We got off the plane, like we got off the train or something rather. It was almost like all right, I get it. He's a colossal asshole. Like, but you know, it was so telegraphed. Like, you know.
You know what? Completely agree with you. All right, for your consideration, I get the feeling you and I are going to be in the same place with this one. Why don't you start this one?
Well, I guess I'll just sort of hand it to the photography in this film. I mean, I honestly, I felt like from the get-go, like right out of the gate, I was just sort of stunned by the gorgeous photography. And this is something I would honestly get like on a 4K, like a 4K Blu-ray, just because the visuals were so spectacular, right? You know, watching it over the internet was just kind of this, I kind of felt like I sort of wished I saw this on the big screen, and, you know, felt like I would buy this on a 4K just to see it on my big TV, whatever. So I'll give it to the photography and just the fly fishing scenes were just gorgeous, and I really particularly loved, you know, when right toward the end when Brad Pitt has like the catch of his life, basically. That literally takes him like downstream. He catches the biggest fish he ever caught. Literally like drags him down where he's like underwater at one point. Yep. I actually wondered, is this going to be sort of like a Moby Dick story? Like, is this going to be the one, you know, he struggled against the fish and when he actually drowned trying to catch it, like, is that how he's going to go? So, you know, it was nice that it didn't end that way. And I just thought that whole scene, again, kind of one of those where like a different director might have gotten a little carried away and tried to do some shots that were just a little over the top, and, you know, maybe now he's underwater or such. They filmed that in a way that was true to the story. It didn't break the mood of the film, but it was still thrilling enough that you actually kind of got pretty excited watching it, and, you know, I thought it really worked really well. So I feel like I'm taking a couple things and sort of tying them into one idea, but that's my for your consideration.
The cinematographer's name was Philippe Rousselot. He did win an Academy Award for this. This was back when the Academy Awards had some weight to them. Yes, and he was my for your consideration as well, and for all the reasons that you just said. So I'm just going to let that stand. But I am going to add one other thing. Because this just kind of got me and just shows the beauty of the written word. Eventually, all things merge into one, and the river runs through it. The river was cut by the world's great flood and runs over rocks from the basement of time. On some of the rocks are timeless raindrops. Under the rocks are the words, and some of the words are theirs. I am haunted by waters. Chills!
Absolutely. It is, again.
And Redford's delivery of that was just pitch perfect.
Yes. I will say this, by the way. I thought it was curious that there's a shot at the end where they sort of show, like, I guess somebody was playing the main character as an old man.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, it was Old Norman, the actor playing Old Norman at the end. Yep.
Yeah. I remember thinking, like, at that point, maybe that should have been Redford, but I guess that wouldn't really have worked so well. Maybe Redford wasn't even that old by then, so it might not have worked so well. But the fact that Redford narrated the whole thing, I remember thinking, like, well, maybe he should have played the old guy. But yeah, maybe again, for the reasons I just said, maybe it wouldn't have worked exactly. But yeah, Redford, I love the fact that he narrated the film. And that, by the way, was one of the interesting things I saw in his interview where, you know, when he finally got the rights to do the film, he said, like, once he had the rights and they started working on a screenplay, he said he couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. He said there was a lot of drafts of the script that just really weren't hitting the mark, and they couldn't figure out why. Then he realized that you needed narration. You needed the author's voice in the film, because in the beginning they didn't do narration. It was a little, you know, just a straight story with the brothers and the father giving their dialogue and everything just sort of playing out on screen. But that poetry, that sort of added magic that came, you know, through the voice of the author was missing. And once they put that back, that's when it really started to take hold and shine. And by the way, I feel like nowadays there's a lot of people will sort of piss all over narration in films. I've never understood that. I always felt like narration is a great tool depending on your story, and sometimes it is absolutely essential. And I think this is one of those parts. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, that Bridges of Madison County movie, I think, could have desperately needed it. They did a really goofy thing. They did a really stupid trope with that, where it was a film that was sort of, the story was like this, where it was set probably not that long ago, but at least like the 50s, I guess. But, you know, but done in a rural town. It wasn't Happy Days. It was, you know, probably the 40s, 50s-ish time, but set in like New England someplace in a quiet little area. They tried to modernize it by having the main character's children find old story, the old writings of the mother, the diary, and then they flash back to the actual story. And again, none of the narration was there, and it just kind of seemed just didn't work. I don't know why I'm even going off on this tangent, but it just didn't work. So the moral of the story is, I think there is a lot of times where narration really does lend itself to a story. I was watching Goodfellas last night. It was on TV. After we were watching this, you know, after the movie was over, we flipped around a little bit. Goodfellas was on. Goodfellas has got narration. It would not work without it. So again, props for them for realizing that was an important, effective tool to use in this film, and it works beautifully.
I will agree. It worked perfectly here. And there's not really much more to say about that. This was a wonderful experience. Thanks, Russ, for the suggestion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Russ. I honestly, I almost feel like a little guilty that I have not, you know, grabbed this one sooner. I didn't watch it a long time ago, but this was a nice treat. It was nice to watch. It was a great film to watch. I'm glad I saw it. And yeah, Russ, get better, buddy. Feel better soon. I hope you're on the mend by now.
Please, seriously. We love you, guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thus ends the special episode for our good friend Russ. We will be back next week with X2.
That's right. The X-Men continues. And I'm looking forward to these, because we might have some interesting discussions with the next couple.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if interesting is the right word, but sure, I'll go with that.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for agreeing to do this bonus episode. This worked out nice. I'm very happy we did it.
Hey, man, frankly, I'll take more requests.
I tell you what, honestly, this might not be a bad idea to inject just a couple, you know, like, we didn't plan on it. It popped up. Nothing saying we can't do an extra episode every so often.
Nope, I'm down with it. Anytime you're up for it, you let me know.
Very good. All right, brother. Another good episode.
Excellent episode, man. I'll talk to you soon.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave.
Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.